Last month, Pokemon announced their new Legends game. And in November of 2022, I was gifted Legends Arceus. It was a gift to play when I went to Texas to visit my partner's newborn niece with his mom and two of his sisters. I grew up in Texas. Starting Legends Arceus, where I first played Pokemon Crystal 23 years ago, is special nostalgia not even the new Legends game will be able to top. There is another nostalgia. When I was 23, I had the pleasure of meeting Richelle Mead. She came to a local bookstore during a book tour, and I was able to ask her a question. I asked how old she was when she wrote her first book. I was feeling back then like I had a bit of an expiration date on reaching my dreams. Mead told me that she wrote a book for her fourth grade classmates when she was 9. It was just the same as I did when I was 9. Just the same genre and everything. Children's spies. Though mine had twins based off Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. Mead is a good bit older than I am, but I think maybe we grew up consuming some of the same media that inspired our age 9 books. But Richelle Mead's book tour was not for her age 9 spy book. The Glittering Court, the first in the new trilogy she was writing, would come out later that year, and she handed out excerpt arcs. You were supposed to buy one of her books at the store in order to get the arc, but Mead kindly asked the bookstore owner to give myself and my sister each an arc. And I devoured it that same night. From that point on, I pre-ordered each TGC trilogy book to read on day 1, but book 1 will always be my favorite. The Glittering Court trilogy is the first I've heard of its style. If y'all have any recommendations in the similar style, I'd love to hear them, because the trilogy tells the same story across 3 different books, but in the points of view of 3 different characters. So while we follow the storyline in Adelaide's POV in The Glittering Court, in Midnight Jewel we follow the exact same story, but we're in Mira's POV. The Emerald Sea is in Tamsin's. This works because while all 3 girls meet in the beginning of the Glittering Court, they each end up taking their own paths, only meeting up again in the end. The Glittering Court takes place in a fantasy time similar to the Elizabethan era. Richelle Mead, my favorite current author, took a lot of her inspiration from my favorite classical author, Jane Austen. I remember being so excited when she shared this with us during her book tour. I'm going to share here a lot of what she, shared. Mead said she'd wanted a series wherein the romance was the main driving point. She talked of how she's always gotten one question from her fans: where is the romance in Vampire Academy? I remember what she said about that almost verbatim, and I quote, which is crazy because first of all, have y'all met Dimitri? But she went on to give a bit more of a serious answer to the question. Rose loves Dimitri, and she loves Lissa, who loves Christian. But Rose's story is first and forever about Rose. It is about a teenage girl coming into herself to become the best Dhampir she can be to protect the Moroi, to be the guardian her best friend needs. But growth attracts love, and so Rose attracted Dimitri. Vampire Academy is about love. It's about relationships and friendships and familyship. After all, there are perks to having Rose Hathaway in your life. Adelaide Bailey finds friendship and relationships, escaping the familyship in her life. She isn't even living her own life, her own name. She is a lady of society, Elizabeth Whitmore, one who has lost her parents and therefore the heir to her real name. The only way for Elizabeth to keep the heir is to keep it in her family by marrying her cousin. The Elizabethan era was a very different time. Jane Austen wrote a similar story in Pride and Prejudice, wherein Elizabeth Bennet could keep her family heir should she just marry her cousin. But just like the Bennet girl, Elizabeth Whitmore wants to marry for love. She doesn't exactly know that at first, she just knows that she doesn't want to marry her cousin. When the proprietor of the Glittering Court visits the Whitmore home with his son, Cedric Thorne, Elizabeth sees an opportunity to get out of marrying her cousin. The Glittering Court is a school of sorts. Mead does love her special schools. It's a school away from Elizabeth's home, her life, to teach young ladies the way of proper society. Elizabeth was raised a proper society. She has no need to learn of it, only a need for a new identity, so she takes on that of her maid, Adelaide Bailey, and she follows Cedric to her special school where she meets Mira and Tamsin. Cedric knows of Adelaide's real identity, of course, but she also knows a secret of his that he's not willing to get out, so he helps her pretend. A high society lady, Adelaide can't even fix her own hair or tie her own corset, but together, she and Cedric decide that it's best she keeps her marks in the Glittering Court mediocre, until circumstances change, of course, and she takes top spot, the diamond spot, away from Tamsin. Tamsin is one of Adelaide's roommates at the Glittering Court. Mira is their third, but Tamsin is the first of the three to go off on her own path. Feeling betrayed by Adelaide and, to a certain extent, Mira, she chooses to take a separate ship from them to the new land where the Glittering Court will truly begin after their initial training. Tamsin has a secret of her own, of course, and she tries so hard for the diamond spot because she thinks that's the only way to protect it. But when her ship is wrecked off course, her entire life is thrown off course too. Tamsin is now responsible for 20 or so other Glittering Court girls far north of their plotted destination. Taken in by the Constancy, a people led by Gideon, the priest of a new religion, Tamsin finds herself torn between him and tradesman Jago. But when it's Gideon that proposes to her, she allows her secret to come out to the surface, only for Gideon to want it to remain hidden. He's trying to establish a new religion, a trust between his patrons. He can't marry a woman with an illicit child. So she refuses him, but she still needs to find a marriage of good standing to make a life for her and her daughter, Mary. She finds a good standing man and the son of the governor, but more complications arise and he tries to have her killed. It's Jago that helps her through the complications, and it's Tamsin that becomes the final puzzle piece in solving all the story complications with her friends, Mira and Adelaide. And it's Jago that Mary and Tamsin end up finding a life with. Mira makes it to Edoria with Adelaide and doesn't cut ties with her friend as Tamsin does, but the different circumstances of the two characters do keep them separated for the most part in their stories. Mira is the Cirmensian war refugee using the Glittering Court as a means to an end, buying her brother Alonso out of his workman's bond. It is her intention from the beginning to earn the money for both Alonso's freedom and for buying herself out of the Glittering Court contract to avoid marriage to a man of high society. Of course she falls in love anyway, because this trilogy is all about love. Grant is the spy she ends up moonlighting for after her daytime duties of the Glittering Court. Together they work in secret to dismantle the politics of Edoria. Grant is a man who shows his love in snarky comments and physical touch as opposed to the romantic gestures of the other love interests. He's the man that Mira falls in love with. Through her work with him, she is able to pay for the freedom of both her brother and herself and freely marry the man she truly loves. It isn't love that Adelaide first enters the Glittering Court for. It is to forge her own path, to not be forced into a marriage she doesn't want. One might wonder then why it is the Glittering Court she enters, a school whose entire focus is to marry women up into high society. It is the choice she's after, and her choice ends up being Cedric. Cedric is the son of the Glittering Court's proprietor, which makes him the difficult choice. He's also a heretic, going against his father's religion, his secret. Adelaide and Cedric hold each other's secrets close and use them to work toward making their choices possible. In the end, Tamsin, Mira, and Adelaide right the wrongs of the New World and end their stories with their own choices. Pokemon Legends Arceus has 3 choices too. In a way, there is the Diamond Clan, the Pearl Clan, and Jubilife Village. Diamond and Pearl are a little at odds, while Jubilife simply stands to the side for their research. And you're their subject. After falling through a vortex in the sky, the good professor, Jubilife, assigns you to help him fill the Pokédex. Of course, this is a Pokemon game, so it's never just that simple. There are legendary Pokemon to catch and a deity to end the game with. It's up to you to choose if Palkia or Dialga is the Pokemon to help you end the game, depending on if you choose Pearl's or Diamond's side. I side with Irida. Her courage to help change the world around her leads you to a friendship the likes of Adelaide's friendship with Mira and Tamsin.